Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 194, the review for Ballerina. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East, and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hyperson55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And it is review time once again, and I'm finally getting around to talking about Ballerina, aka From the World of John Wick, Ballerina. That title for the film, that latter one I just said, is arguably one of the worst titles I've ever heard. I understand that this is branding and you want to try and connect it to the John Wick films, but good gravy, there must have been a better way to do that. Anyway, this is the first spin-off from the John Wick films, and if you know me, I appreciate the hell out of those movies, especially for it being an original property in the sea of IPs and franchises. And it's just been super fun and entertaining seeing how the world has expanded since the first film. And while some people poo-poo on the idea of any film existing beyond the first one, I have a lot of love for this world and the assassins and just the vibe that it puts out there. And I'm still down for more, despite the fact that even though John Wick 4 is looked at by some as being the best entry in the series, I did find it a little exhausting by the time it was over. Still had a good time, don't get me wrong, but again, just felt a little long in the tooth by the time it was done. Anyway, I have been very curious to see what this film would turn out like since it was announced. However, in the last few months leading up to its release, I did have some concerns about certain aspects of the trailers, and then when there was that news about the additional footage that was shot by Chad Stahelski instead of the original director. However, with all that being said, I saw the film on opening night and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. This film is a lot of fun, and I'm going to tell you why in this spoiler-free review. Okay, so the film can be summed up as the following. This film centers on Eve, an assassin trained from childhood by a secret organization to be an efficient killer. After a number of years, she is presented with an opportunity to find the person responsible for her father's death and get revenge. However, her actions will have ramifications not only for her, but certain other parties involved in this world of assassination as well. And that is a way for me to summarize this film without going into the area of spoilers. So the story for this film is fine. If you've watched a lot of action films, then A Tale of Revenge is very familiar to you. That being said, this film inserts enough of the cool and intriguing elements from the John Wick world to help elevate the material. And again, I love learning about the rules of this world and the expanding lore that they've created. And just like the previous John Wick films, there's a lot of decent humor spread throughout that shows up in surprising and unexpected ways, whether it be during action scenes or certain kills that can range from being cool to serious to absurd or hilarious, and that happens just in the best way possible. There are moments where you're just questioning how some of this stuff was thought out and then put onto screen, and it's sometimes just dumb as hell, but it's so funny and really entertaining. And I will say that the film does attempt to have moments between characters that's supposed to be emotional and surprising. However, they don't quite land due to the script or not having enough time with certain characters or scenarios to have the impact that the film thinks that it does. But overall, it's still pretty good and you'll be entertained by the time it's over. So let's talk about the cast, and they were all pretty good. However, the main standout was obviously Ana de Armas as Eve. While her backstory and motivation are pretty standard fare for a protagonist, de Armas gives Eve an interesting balance of tenacity, vulnerability, grace, and brutality. She's tough, but she's not invincible, so she has to be crafty and resourceful to get results. And since her short but sweet action scene in No Time to Die, I knew that Ana de Armas had the chops to work in future action films, and here she was really good. And then you have Gabriel Byrne as the Chancellor, and he was a decent villain. I wouldn't say he stands out with a distinctive look or any notable personality traits. He just looks mean and does the regular villain stuff. But Byrne does infuse just enough into his performance to have the character be someone that you want to see get their comeuppance. I also liked Norman Reedus in this film as Daniel Pine. Reedus just exudes a cool aura, and it was just nice to see him in this universe. He suits it so well, and his action stuff was pretty cool. I just wish we got to see more of the character. I also enjoyed seeing Angelica Houston back as the director. She was one of my favorite characters from John Wick 3 just because of the cold and authoritative tone that she had, but also the fact that she had so much power and influence in her position in the organization that she runs. And Houston continues to play the character just as well as she did before, and we get just a little bit more to the character than we saw before, but not too much. It was also really nice to see Ian McShane again as the calm, charming yet morally grey Winston. And man, it was so nice seeing Lance Reddick again as Charon one last time. As you guys know, I love Reddick, especially from Fringe. He was my best man in that show, and his work in this film was subtle but memorable, and it just felt nice but sad at the same time seeing him on screen. Also, shout out to my EastEnders alumni Sharon Duncan Brewster, who showed up as Nog. She was pretty good, and I liked her interactions with Ana de Armas and the role that she played. And of course, we have to talk about Keanu Reeves as John Wick. Obviously, from the advertising, they let the audience know that he was going to be here. And I was concerned about if his presence would take away from Eve's story. Thankfully, his utilization in the film was good. He was there, but not for too long. He was used not too much, but not too little. He served his purpose and then disappeared, and it was fine. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the presentation. And with this film coming from the John Wick world, there's a certain expectation that comes when it comes to the visual style of things, and thankfully Ballerina was up to the task. The action is insane, and while the hand-to-hand combat and set pieces don't reach the high highs of the John Wick films, it certainly has its own flavor of violence and chaos that it brings to the table. There's a lot of punching and kicking and shooting and stabbing and breaking and much more, and the variety of ways that people get hurt or killed is very impressive. It's painful and it's unique, and it's very surprising considering that after 4 John Wick films that preceded this film, there's still so many interesting ways that they were able to create all these different set pieces for Eve and some other characters to get down and dirty. It was crazy. And I also have to give a shout out to the sound department, as the punches, kicks, firearms and other things, they have so much heft to them. You could really feel the impact of what was happening on screen. So I was just like, yo, the sound in this film is pretty well done. So, shout out to those guys. And then there was the score that I enjoyed. And while I wouldn't say it was a super memorable one, I would say that it served its purpose in the film, and Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richard created some solid material that worked with what was happening on screen. So now we come to the conclusion. Overall, I would say Ballerina was a lot of fun. While it's not going to be any of the John Wick films, I feel like it carves its own path with its crazy, violent and badass action scenes, and again, expanding the world in some interesting ways that leaves you invested in what's going on with Eve's story. And again, Ana de Armas' central performance is just fab. So if you haven't lost interest in the franchise and you're still a fan of these kind of films, then I would argue, give it a watch. I think you'll have a good time. So now I turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of Ballerina, or Ballerina from the World of John Wick? Again, we don't talk about that stupid ass title. But yeah, what did you think of the movie? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? How would you compare it to the previous John Wick films? And would you like to see more? Let me know in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter where I'm Hypersonic55 or at FilmFocus55. Again, check us out on Instagram and all other places where podcasts can be found, whether it's YouTube or Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm going to quit rambling for now. Thank you for listening as always, and until the next time, this is the Hypersonic55 signing out. Peace.